Well, good morning. Welcome to Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV Big Fox. I'm your host, Frank Acom, and we are broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio here on Market Street in Corning. I've got my contact information up already because we received so many great back and forth, whether emails, texts, calls, the last couple days, and we have a lot to discuss. As a matter of fact, I'm going to take that down. But as a matter of fact, we had to reschedule an interview for today, which will be moved to next week. So you have the full hour with me. So buckle up because we have a lot to talk about. Of course, and I'd love to hear your opinion on it, last night's town hall with the former president, Donald Trump. I have a couple different takes on this and maybe what you're seeing in the media. There's a lot of upset people on the left attacking CNN. CNN is trying to defend themselves. And I think there's a reason behind the decision that CNN made to have this town hall. I think many of us were surprised that that would even be considered. We know that the media thought that then candidate Trump was essentially a joke, that what we were watching was a circus. So they put on all his rallies, thinking in the back of their mind, well, this is perfect. He gets a nomination, he runs, Hillary destroys him, and the whole time we get great ratings. That's because they're in a bubble, and everybody around them disliked Trump. Everybody they knew disliked Trump. So when then candidate Trump's message started getting through to the quote-unquote forgotten men and women, as he called them, in his speeches, they didn't see it coming. And of course, he ultimately won. So they put on their shoulders the burden, if you will, of the blame for giving him all that attention, giving him free publicity, essentially, because, again, they thought it was a joke. So I fast forward to today. I did not believe they would be covering his rallies, and they haven't really. Not that he's held as many as he did in the past, but they weren't going to show his rallies, and I certainly did not think they would do a town hall. But my theory on this now, and we're going to dive into it a little bit more, and of course we're going to talk about the end of Title 42, which ends today, and a few other local issues. But my theory on this is this town hall, this early in the season, was the perfect excuse to get that backlash, get that criticism, and then say, you know what? There was just too many lies told. There was too much misinformation. We are not going to have any more town halls. We're not going to show any more rallies. So this was their way to get it out of the way. Do you understand what I mean? To say, okay, we tried. He just could not be reined in. We're gonna say no more town halls. And I almost feel like when you read some of the tweets from the left that they're playing into that as well. So this may have been their initial excuse to no longer give the person who's polling number one, Donald Trump, any more coverage than absolutely necessary. Now, what are some of the things that we learned? Well, if you didn't watch it, he did talk about the recent court case with E. Jean Carroll, saying, this woman, I don't know her. I never met her. I have no idea who she is. That was one of the first early takeaways that the media started flashing on the bottom. The second one, and this coming actually from CNN, was his idea that, okay, you guys don't want to negotiate, meaning Democrats with Republicans on the debt ceiling? Well, let's blow up the debt ceiling. So we're going to talk, I don't want to talk about this all morning, don't get me wrong. But I do think there's a few little things that we have to tweak and maybe hear something different than what you're getting elsewhere. So we will talk more about it when we come back. We got to take a short break. So stay with us. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking. As I said, we got the full hour together. So make sure that you contact me because I'd love to hear from you. We'll be right back. We We are back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV Big Fox, broadcasting from the Hesselson's studio. Tomorrow on the program, during the M.A. Neal Financial Services interview section of our program, we'll be talking with Kirk House. Kirk House is, I believe, the director, maybe his official title, but we'll find out tomorrow, of the Steuben County Historic Society. We also will be talking to the Chemung County Historical Society in about a month or two, just to promote some upcoming events. Again, remember, the program is about community, even though I'm talking about national news this morning. Just worth mentioning, we're going to go through it quickly. Trump's town hall. Trump says the GOP should be willing to blow up the debt ceiling. If they don't give you massive cuts, you're going to have to do a default, he said. I do like that he highlighted the fact that when he was president, I wonder if I have that quote here, because it was kind of funny from this article from the New York Post by Steve Nelson. He said about Nancy Pelosi, where is it? That basically the same thing was done when he was president, that there was threats of going to default. And it was never really an issue back then. He said, essentially, this is the way things are done. And then, so this Collins, the moderator, if you want to call her that, I will say, for my liking, I didn't think she did a bad job, but for my liking, she did interrupt a lot. She did want to hit home those points of, that's not true. That's, it was a little bit awkward in that sense. I would not envy her in that position. I don't think there's any way of winning, though I understand now they're going to give her perhaps Don Lemon's show. So maybe this was the promotion for that, which is kind of interesting. I'm going on a tangent here, but I do believe she interrupted too much. I do believe that it was at times aggressive because she had to make her talking points get in there no matter what. And sometimes, and I know Trump called her a nasty woman, as he is wont to do, but it was a little bit too intrusive in a way, the way that she kept interjecting herself into it. But she said, just to be clear, Mr. President, you think the U.S. should default if the White House does not agree to the spending cuts Republicans are demanding. He said, well, you might as well do it now, because you'll do it later, because we have to save this country. Our country is dying. Our country is being destroyed by stupid people. So Collins asked about his opposition to using the debt ceiling to win concessions. Why is it different now that you're out of office? And this is why CNN may have screwed up, because Trump said, well, now I'm not president. So basically, I think maybe because there's been so much media hatred of Trump for so long, they may have forgot that it's little things like that for whatever reason, and you could be the judge of it, resonated with a lot of people. And that's why there's so much pushback at CNN. Now, last couple things, maybe the big takeaways, if you will, coming from CNN on their own coverage. Trump was vague on a federal abortion ban. He said basically that he would, with the ending of Roe v. Wade, there's some negotiation available there. He also didn't have, and this is what maybe is the biggest headline from last night's town hall, is that he wouldn't say that he would back Ukraine in the war with Russia. I think, not to put words in his mouth, I think he's pretty clear about it. His line of reasoning was, well, we need to be able to negotiate. And negotiate was a continuing theme throughout the town hall. Again, I want to hear your take on it last night, if you watched it, where I'm just going through the who, what, when, where, and why. Trump said he'd pardon January 6th rioters, inclined to pardon, as his exact words. He suggests family separation, immigration policy would return. He said, when you say to a family that if you come, we're going to break you up, they don't come. So that is kind of and CNN highlights that he got back to the name calling tactics, such as calling Nancy Pelosi a crazy woman. I'm not good at the Ron DeSantis one. Desanctimonious. But anyway, this is no opinion one way or the other on town hall. I'm looking at it more from the media standpoint. I think and I'm going to tell you from both sides what people are saying. But I more importantly want to hear what your thought of the town hall was. And again, this is not going to be our focus all morning. We're going to actually wrap up most of this discussion in the next segment. So stay with us. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox. Welcome back to Frankly Speaking. We're talking about last night's town hall, which is a pretty major story. But again, we have so much with Title 42 and how it affects us locally. We're definitely going to get to that. But I want to just highlight or maybe dive in a little bit deeper to what I was saying in the last break. So former President Trump said that he would end the Ukraine war in 24 hours. He also said if he were elected, the European Union needs to pay a lot more. I don't even know if that's elected. He's just saying now. So we're at 170 billion and they're at 20. You don't have to know too much about history or geography to realize they're a little bit more affected than we are. So they've got to put a lot more money because they're taking advantage of us just like every other country did. Also, the quote I wanted to find earlier was when they were talking about the debt limit, because Trump said, okay, blow it up. It's going to happen anyway. He said, but when we have a debt limit, and they use that very seriously with me. They came in, Schumer came in with Nancy Pelosi, and they said, we'll use it, we'll violate it, we'll do whatever. They talked a whole lot different than they do right now. But of course, the coverage wasn't there. We hear that it's the end of times with the debt ceiling if we don't get this done. But anyway, I digress. So, excuse me, his campaign responded after the event saying tonight, President Donald J. Trump laid out his vision to reverse the Biden decline starting on day one. Joe Biden has turned everything into a disaster. Inflation, the economy, the border, crime, energy, China, Russia, and wokeness in schools. President Trump will save the economy, bring down inflation, secure the border, crush the deep state, and prevent World War III. The campaign added that he is the only one who can stop the forces from destroying our country. Anyone else will be ripped to shreds. Now let's look at the other side. President Joe Biden releasing a statement on social media, tweeted this out after the town hall last night. It's simple, folks. Do you want 4 more years of that? If you don't, pitch into our campaign. Fundraising off, as politicians are known to do. Now, I found it, and this is why my original theory, if you're just joining us, my original theory is this was a one and done, essentially. There'll be a few smaller ones, but let's have it go bad, meaning for them, that Trump says things we don't want to hear. Let's have it be aggressive. Let's have it be, the moderator. Go after them, and then we can use it as an excuse to say, well, it was too much. It was too many quote-unquote lies. It was too much misinformation. We just can't give him the platform. It's just not right. They tried that the last go-around to a little bit of success, but I think this may have been the way for them to open the door and say, we are just not going to cover the front runner. And CNN, their own Jake Tapper, saying, quote, lies keep coming fast and furious at the town hall. And I'm not going to go through his whole quote because it's quite a lengthy quote, but questioning it, and this is the one that I wanted to bring up to you. This is what piqued my interest the most. This is directly from CNN. CNN faces harsh criticism after Trump unleashes a fire hose of lies during its live town hall. Now, they start by saying, Caitlin Collins did a good job pushing back. See, they want that pushback, obviously. At times, her saying the election was not rigged, Mr. President. You cannot keep saying that all night long. You saw it if you watched. But then they go through a couple other comments, and CNN aired it all. Remember, this is coming from CNN. On and on it went. It felt like 2016 all over again. It was Trump's unhinged social media feed brought to life on stage. And Collins was put in an uncomfortable position, given the town hall was conducted in front of a Republican audience that applauded Trump. That was another surprise. I did not realize that was an aspect to this, that you had Republican, and I don't know if they were all undecided Republicans. My nose itches. I don't know if that was, I thought that was maybe another way to add to this, well, we don't have to do this anymore. Look, the crowd laughed at his remarks. They supported his lies. You can see the headlines already, and then saying we no longer have to cover the front runner. Yes, some news was made, it said, but for most of the night, the nation's eyes were transfixed on Trump's abuse of the platform that he was given. And that's definitely a media mindset. the platform that you were given, you were blessed with, that you were given this amazing opportunity and you abused it. Well, why did he abuse it? I mean, he was answering the questions, very often being interrupted by the moderator. At one point, he even insulted Collins, calling her a nasty person. And Jake Tapper, as I mentioned, said, "We don't have enough time to fact check every lie told." That's a line they used quite frequently in the past, though, I would say. Trump's team was naturally delighted with the results. Advisors to Trump are thrilled at how this is going so far for him. They can't believe he is getting an hour on CNN with an audience that cheers his every line and laughs at every one of his jokes. I was surprised. I was surprised they gave him the town hall in the first place. I'm doubly surprised that the whole crowd was Republicans. I never thought that to be the case. Now, in their own article, CNN, they're calling out the network boss, Chris Licht. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. How Licht and other CNN executives address the criticism in the coming days and weeks will be crucial. Will they defend what transpired, or will they express some regret? That's the key point. Regret, meaning, well, we tried, we just don't like what he had to say, we're no longer going to cover it. It's interesting that CNN's doing their own obituary on what happened, what transpired last night. James Fallow wrote, "This is CNN's lowest moment as an organization." I don't know if you followed CNN's history. "This is the 2024 Republican presidential primary." Brian Stetler, who's the media critic, maybe not the right exact term, he analyzes the media for CNN. "Look away if you choose, but that is what it's going to be like. Should news outlets sanitize it or stare it in the face?" Sanitize it, meaning perhaps, again, no longer allowing it on the air. "To that point, I have complaints, but I don't really blame CNN for having a town hall with a GOP frontrunner," said Sarah Longwell. "It's good to know what we're facing. We can't hide from the fight in front of us, Trump is probably going to be the nominee, and we need to be clear-eyed about what we're dealing with." This was a preview of what American journalism can expect from a 2024 campaign featuring Mr. Trump, who despite... Anyway, why am I reading all these? Like I said, I don't want to spend the whole time on this, but I do find it interesting that the media is criticizing the media on the town hall. Liberal journalists as well as politicians blasting CNN, saying they've totally lost control. This is AOC, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. They have lost total control of this town hall. She put town hall in quotes, to again be manipulated into platforming election disinformation, defenses of January 6th, and a public attack on a sexual abuse victim. The audience is cheering him on and laughing at the host. So platform, that's twice we've heard platform. Are the talking points coming out? We are not going to give him platform. And listen, you can say, "I'm sick of watching Trump. I don't care." Fine. I get it. I totally understand. But you cannot deny the fact he's a front runner. You wouldn't be saying these type of things. And let's say President Biden does a town hall. Do you believe in any scenario there's the pushback by the moderator to President Biden? You can be whatever political affiliation you want to be. I mean, you know in your heart the answer to that. There would not be that kind of pushback. Now, I think those who have a tendency to dislike Trump would say, well, Biden doesn't lie as much as Trump. But if you notice what very often in the fact-checking gets picked apart as lies is really, well, this has been said a million times, so I don't want to dive down that rabbit hole, but is kind of the Trump-isms, right? The generalities, the overstatements. But I don't want to dive into something that we're looking in the future here, but I'm trying to take a look at it from a perspective you may not see in other media outlets, which is, why did they do this last night? And I think, I don't know, time will tell, but I think it's their excuse to say, we've done our due diligence, we gave him a town hall, he couldn't handle the responsibility, the platform, and so no more. The pushback was too much. Meghan McCain, who we know is no fan of, there's no love lost there between the two. This is a Trump infomercial. Matt Fuller from the Daily Beast, the far-left Daily Beast, said this is an irresponsible disaster of journalism. We have absolutely learned nothing. Yahoo News senior correspondent Michael Wise said this is really not going how CNN must have thought or hoped it would go. He is steamrolling, getting laughs for his crassest comments, and seems far more self-assured and confident than someone this deep in the soup should be. I don't know if CNN expected something different last night, then I believe that would be a meeting that they should be having at CNN, because you have President Trump, who won people over with that stop at that point at the beginning in 2016. And then you have an audience full of Republicans. There's too many red flags in my head saying, why was this held if they expected anything different, unless there's something on the back end for the end game. I know I'm running just a little late. I'm going to let myself run just a second late so we can get out of this topic and move along. Chris Christie, who has this thought in his head that he's going to run for president. Hey, things like that happen when you're surrounded by yes people all the time, right? But he said Donald Trump says he would end the war in Ukraine in 24 hours tonight on CNN. Despite how ridiculous that is to say, I suspect he would try to do it by turning Ukraine over to Putin and Russia. Hashtag Putin's puppet. There you go. And again, I mentioned that he believes that he could be president, Chris Christie. And as I mentioned at the very beginning, Caitlin Collins, who was a moderator last night, it is being reported that she is going to be offered Don Lemon's primetime slot. Well, that's I thought it was an interesting choice of moderator because I was not overly familiar with her, but now that all makes sense. So what did you think about last night's town hall as we move on and talk about some other major issues? So stay with us. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking. There's contact information. Get a hold of me. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox. We are back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox, broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio. I'm your host, Frank Acom, and as I mentioned, we had to reschedule an interview today to next week, so we have the whole hour, now half an hour, to spend together. Tomorrow on the program, though, Kirk House from the Steuben County Historical Society will be our guest. We'll find out what's going on there, how you can become a member. As I mentioned earlier, we will have the Chemung County Historical Society on. It's already scheduled just a little bit later on to better coincide with some events they have coming up. And next week, we're booked up solid. And somebody I've been highlighting, we're going to have Assemblyman Phil Palmisano on the program next Friday. We're going to talk about the budget, the end of session. There'll be a lot to cover, so make sure you tune in for that. And we have just great guests all next week. So let's get back to today, though. I mentioned the town hall. We're going to move away from that, though I do think no matter how many tweets you see that say it's not newsworthy, nothing newsworthy came from that event last night. Have you watched the news this morning? Have you went to any websites? Because there must have been something there that's newsworthy. But maybe you're having a kind of a slow morning, getting out of bed, kind of getting around, getting ready for work. This will pump you up. This will jazz you up right here. This coming from Fox News. When I go to my browser here, hold on real quick so you can see it along with me. Former New York governor reemerges as critics of the Democrats' far-left policies, fueling a comeback speculation. We had talked in the past, so I do think it was more of a fundraising tactic that Senator Gillibrand was suggesting that Governor Cuomo may challenge her. And that's a part of this article. I'm not going to go through the whole article because I read it more in jest, though it is something to take into consideration. You know that Eliot Spitzer, back in the day, ran for comptroller or attempted to run for comptroller. I don't remember. And he was a disgraced governor as well. And I didn't realize that Cuomo was doing so many things behind the scenes. He's launched a podcast, apparently, and he's got a political action committee and started the Gun Safe America project. So it's not like he's doing some stuff behind the scenes here. And then he's going on these videos and criticizing specifically on crime, something we talk about so often here on the program. He said, Democrats, when you ignore crime, you hurt the people you represent. Cuomo argued that Democrats don't want to talk about crime and don't want to hear the word crime spoken. Quote, there is no crime problem. That's where he loses us. There is no crime problem. Never mind what you've seen and what you felt. It's all Republican propaganda, he states in the video. But then it was more sarcastic the way he said it. So I think he realizes that crime is a major issue. And the reason I bring that up is because I think he saw how successful Lee Zeldin was as a Republican campaigning on that exact issue. And so if he highlights the fact that crime, they don't want to talk about crime, and he did say it sarcastically, there is no crime problem. It's all Republican propaganda. He's saying you ignore the crime issue to your own chagrin. Then they're going to pay the price for it. And the far left policy. So why do I mention this? There is a potential here, again, for a challenge to Gillibrand. Does he primary Hochul? There's nothing to say that he can't. Some have speculated that Governor Cuomo may primary against Senator Gillibrand in 2024. Though speculation in politics can be about as useful as pounding sand, said Jake Delmani, a partner of Mercury Public Affairs. The thought is that a former governor, only his previous office or the U.S. Senate would be appealing, so governor or Senate. Though there is historical precedent for following a different track. Disgraced former governor Eliot Spitzer ran for New York City comptroller several years ago after resigning. Now, they did reach out, this again from Fox News, they did reach out, I don't have to keep showing you that same picture, to Rich Azzopardi. Remember him? Cuomo spokesperson. The future is the future, he said. Okay. But the moment the governor has made his near-term priorities clear. He gets these questions fairly often, which I think are fueled by the fact that many people are facing a crisis in confidence in government at many levels, and now view the circumstances in which he left office as a political railroading than it was. Oh, that's an interesting comment. That makes it sound to me like he's running for something. But I think with Cuomo's ego, but also, just historically, yes, Spitzer ran for comptroller, but wouldn't it be difficult if you ran for governor, were governor for that many years, and then, took a step down? Politicians don't necessarily think that way. They don't want to take a step down, no matter how many times many of them call it public service. They want to keep moving up. I could see maybe a potential for a Gillibrand primary, but that's 2024. He'd have to start working on that relatively quickly here. Enough on that. All right. I'm just telling you, we're going to pack in so much stuff on this program, and we're moving so fast. Next up, we're going to be talking about the end of Title 42, how that affects us. I've received some great comments on it already. We haven't even started discussing it, so please feel free to contact me right there. And if you have any questions for Kirk House, who's going to be on the program tomorrow with the Steuben County Historical Society, that's the best way to reach me. Also, Assemblyman Phil Palmisano on next Friday. We'll have many guests in between, but Phil will be our guest on Friday. So if you have any questions about the budget, about the energy policies we've talked so much about frequently, crime, or recently, not frequently, crime, so many things that we could ask him. So I'd love to hear what your thoughts are on the budget and New York State politics in general. So stay with us. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox. Welcome back to Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox. So let's talk about the end of Title 42, the confusion that is at the border. It's interesting because I received quite a few text messages this morning, or emails, however you sent them in. They all come in the same place for me. That was kind of interesting that a lot of you have the same mindset, even though we hadn't talked about it yet, which is they keep changing the language of what to call the people crossing the border. It was originally illegal immigrants, then it's migrants. Now it's asylum seekers. What was it? Undocumented? It kept going through. It's sometimes hard to follow the language, and we know that things like that are just talking points, basically sent out to the media. This is how we refer to it now. And I was watching something this morning, some news program, and it caught my interest because we know there's such a homeless issue throughout the country, even affecting locally. And the person doing the interview didn't call them homeless, called them unhoused. I thought that was interesting. So we may be hearing that more, but that was just a side note that caught my interest. So there's a lot of confusion as the end of Title 42 is tonight. It lapses overnight from Thursday to Friday. And that, of course, was a rule put under, it was under former President Trump. that was to prevent people with COVID-19 from entering the United States. So that has run up, and it's created a real mess at the border. So much so, well, first of all, border crossings top 10,000 daily as migrants seek U.S. entry before Title 42 ends. So thousands. We've had numbers, various numbers throughout the week, mentioning them to you. Now, it's affecting us, and I actually said this yesterday on the program. I said it's going to affect us locally. We already heard rumblings. We know that New York City can't handle it, and so somehow they think rural upstate communities can handle the influx. I'm confused by that. I think most people, other than have been paying attention to this, are also very confused by how already strapped resources in upstate New York, rural areas, are somehow going to do more and have more availability, I guess, if you will, for housing and things like that for the influx of illegal immigrants. Biden did also admit yesterday, quietly in a way, almost accidentally, that the border has been in chaos for a number of years. Yes, it's been something that's been screamed from the rooftop by so many. It's been chaotic for a while, he said. Well, we've had chaos at the border for a number of years. We sure have. But Governor Hochul, and I'm not sure if I saved this article or not, so maybe, no, I did not. That's a completely different one, which we may have an opportunity to get to. Hochul is questioning the constitutionality of counties that are putting forth a state of emergency. Now, we know that the governor, just a few days ago, declared a state of emergency because of the border issue. So many followed suit in a way, and many counties throughout the state. Specifically, I heard the news that Chemung County, Chris Moss, the executive Chris Moss, has declared a state of emergency. And what that means, and he's not the only, there's a few others, Rockland and Orange County, and I want to say I saw Oneida, somewhere else. They've declared a state of emergency on this too, because if the city starts busing, the influx of migrants coming over the border to our rural upstate areas, it's going to be a major concern. It's going to be a burden on the system. So what is basically done when a state of emergency is declared, it bars hotels and shelters from accepting migrants. You could face a fine. You could. There'll be some type of punishment. So Governor Hochul not liking this because she's looking for answers on what to do here. Because of course, it's interesting that it is a not far left. It's a Democrat issue that they haven't had a problem with the open borders. So now that we see the repercussions of that, they're not sure how to handle it and still save face. We're looking into the constitutionality of what they did, Governor Hochul said. We believe this is going to continue to grow and scale. I'm working very closely with the mayor to identify, meaning Mayor Adam, to identify more sites so we can welcome those individuals. They are human beings. They deserve to be treated with dignity. Again, if New York City can't handle it, why does she think, to quote her, to be treated with dignity? Is that to send them to a place that is already overburdened and does not have the infrastructure and the setup for this type of influx? I've got to take another short break. I know it's hard to believe. We're just scratching the surface on this exact topic, but I found that interesting as I said yesterday in the program that we'll be dealing with this at the local level. So Chemung County already declaring a state of emergency, Rockland, Orange, Oneida, Rensselaer County, I guess that was the other one. So we'll talk more about it when we come back. Stay with us. This is Frankly Speaking on WYDC TV, Big Fox. Lost track of time there. I was looking at this article. So local governments, welcome back to Frankly Speaking, by the way. Local governments are clashing with New York over the migrant policy. State leaders pointed that they set aside $1 billion in aid for ongoing resources with migrants and hoping to take some pressure off of New York City. But at the same time, elected officials are condemning what they have said is poor communication from state and city officials, which is typical. This happened quite a bit under Governor Cuomo as well. Oneida County Executive Anthony Picenti said, I think everyone has to be realistic about what they can and can't do here. They need to know that. We've got some vague answers, not even statements, vague statements for the governor's people on the call yesterday. And I think he's exactly right. And I think that's why it was a good move for Executive Chris Moss out of Chemung County to declare the state of emergency, because it has to be made clear, and people have to just use their heads about it, that certain areas, upstate, rural upstate areas, are just not suited or capable to help in this manner in the way that New York City is set up for this. Mark Molinaro, gubernatorial candidate a few years back, he's now congressman. He condemned the move to house migrants in hotels as inhumane. Governor Hochul and Mayor Adams should be putting pressure on President Biden to implement common sense and compassionate border security and immigration reforms. Instead, they are relocating hundreds of migrants to upstate New York counties without proper funding, coordination, or approval from local communities. And that's why you may have saw earlier when I had the browser up, Congressman Mike Lawler, I don't know if you realize, but the president was in New York yesterday giving some speeches and some fundraising. And one of the districts he was in, and last I knew, Congressman Mike Lawler, who is a Republican, was going to go to the meeting or the event. And he said that he decided to write an open letter, and this is coming from the New York Post, an open letter to President Biden, thanking him for the invitation and speaking with him prior to the speech. But there's two issues that he hits on here, and I thought he did a very good job with this. As we discussed them, I encourage you to move past the divisive rhetoric around the debt ceiling debate and instead seek common ground with Speaker McCarthy on how to reasonably rein in long-term spending while ensuring we do not default on our already incurred debt. I understand there are issues we will not agree on, but we need bipartisan compromise now, not more partisan finger-pointing. I hope that we have an opportunity to get to a little bit of that. Am I already running late? I am. About the debt ceiling. But then he goes on to talk about the border. With Title 42 having expired, reports indicate a surge of migrants approaching the border that will add to a crisis that has seen New York City take in over 60,000 migrants, and despite their sanctuary city status, come to the realization that they can't handle the influx. This has caused so much strain that they're now busing migrants into the Hudson Valley, which must be a part of his district, but in other areas of upstate New York. He has done so without jurisdiction, without coordinating with municipal offices, or having any long-term plan. Yes, it's not fair to anyone involved. They don't know if where they're sending the migrants to is going to help them, be safe, whatever the case may be. It's just moving them, the migrants that came from across the border, moving them out of New York City, because New York City, who normally gets the lion's share of everything, they can't handle it. So pass it along. So he said to President Biden, I urge you to work with House Republicans to secure our border and begin the necessary work for creating a bipartisan immigration reform plan to fix this once and for all. You have an opportunity, sir, to extend an olive branch to Speaker McCarthy and work with our Republican conference to find common ground. I know, for one, that is what my constituents want to see from their elected leaders. I hope you agree. We'll wait for a response. How's that? We got to take another short break. Stay with us. We are back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV Big Fox. We were talking about the end of Title 42. Jay Johnson, former Homeland Security Secretary, saying that this is not good. I would kind of think that goes without saying, but Biden reportedly planning to release migrants without court dates or tracking, which is not good. A big problem, according to Jay Johnson. Because even when the numbers are high, ICE should be able to give a migrant a notice to appear at a specific date and a specific place so that we can track them. And they have an expectation that they have to show up for immigration court. Now, I would wonder what the numbers of that actually are, where people show up, but that's a side note. If we're releasing people without giving them NTAs and without tracking them, that's a big problem. And it suggests to me that we've got to do a much better job at resourcing and doing our best to keep track of who's entering our country. Now, we mentioned the divisive rhetoric with the debt ceiling. I know that Schumer was very mad. But wait till you hear, he said they refuse to take the debt ceiling default off the table. Just refusing. Well, that's called negotiation. You guys are refusing to negotiate. And as Trump said, but also Joe Manchin said, that this is what happens when you have, two parties. It's not as if in the past everybody just rubber stamped it. But I'm going to tell you about more divisive rhetoric when we come back. But last break, and then we'll wrap things up here on Frankly Speaking. Stay with us. Welcome back to Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV Big Fox, broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio. So we talk about divisive rhetoric a lot. We talk about this divide, and a lot of times people have a lot to gain from that, right? The media, whoever, politicians. Democrat Representative Hank Johnson. Now, don't get too worked up about what he had to say yet, because if you recall, Hank Johnson has made a lot of kind of outlandish statements in the past. But he was talking about the end of Title 42, and he said, those folks coming across are the ones who are helping put food on our table. Without them, we're not able to eat. If all of them were turned away and this legislation passed, making it easier to get at people who are already here legally, and you have no immigration, then we would have no food on our plates. We would have nobody taking care of the building, the construction, et cetera, okay? Then this is where the rhetoric really takes off. I mean, if you could get back to slavery, you would gladly do so. Saying that to Republicans. Now, how do you have a good faith negotiation on any of this if that is the kind of rhetoric that's being used? I mean, if you could get back to slavery, you would gladly do so. But if you could pay people $1 an hour, you'd settle for that. That's the race to the bottom that we have with immigrants lined up at the border and trying to get in and go to work. Now, needless to say, a lot of conservatives, a lot of Republicans outraged over this, from the Heritage Foundation saying that he should be censored. It's not only factually false, it's stupid comparing slavery to working for a wage and just shamelessly insulting. But as I said, in the past, Hank Johnson has made outlandish statements in the past, pushing conspiracy theories. He said that he wondered if the classified documents found at Biden's home were planted there. He also, if you recall, was concerned that Guam would sink into the ocean if too many people were allowed to inhabit the island. Quote, my fear is the whole island will become so overly populated that it will tip over and capsize. All right. Last thing, because I know we're out of time. Santos pled not guilty, as you know. I don't think we'll be talking a lot about that, but if you had not already heard that news, pleading not guilty to, I think it was 13 charges. I think the wire fraud alone was 20 years, possible of 20 years. So if anything comes from that, we'll talk about it tomorrow. As I mentioned, Kirk House will be our guest tomorrow from the Steuben County Historic Society. Thank you for joining us. Oh, man, that went quick. We had so much more to talk about. Have a great day, everyone. This has been Frankly Speaking on WYDC TV. Big Fox, I look forward to talking to you tomorrow morning at 7 a.m. See you then.